Righto, folks. Harrington here, back at you. Okay, now do you recall, back in episode 19, we were focused on construction liens. And what we were talking about there is how workers, your roofers, your tilers, your drywallers, how they could protect themselves against the outlay of time and money, for materials and paying their own crew, against non-payment of the owner, the project owner, or the homeowner. So that is an important topic because clearly that sucks if you do all that and then not get paid. However, there is a flip side to the coin. Today, let's talk about homeowners who pay an upfront deposit and then either the work doesn't get done or it gets done really badly. What can you do to protect yourselves? Get it on. Part one. Okay, so like most of these videos, I do these because I get a lot of calls and I talk to a lot of clients who find themselves in this situation. And recently, for reasons that we're going to discuss, I've gotten a few calls from homeowners that have paid, in some cases, large upfront deposits, only to have, well, in one case, the worker just disappeared altogether, poof, into the ether. And in another case, the worker did a little bit of work, but, never actually bought supplies and then kind of disappeared. And, you can imagine. You probably had the experience before. It's not uncommon. So part one is why? Why do these things happen? Why do they keep happening? All right. So I'm in Florida at the moment, and I can tell you from the point of view of, just in my neighborhood, there's tons of construction going on. We've got 3 new big high rises going up, and just down the block, there's a brand new community being built called Nora. And so within a mile radius, there's 4 massive projects happening. And I think that's fairly indicative of the entire state. There's a lot of work going on in Florida. There's, population is rising and there's development. And so that's part of the problem, is that there's a lot of work. And I think what in some cases these contractors do is they overextend themselves. They take on more work than they can actually do. Now, when you have more jobs to do than you can actually do or even actually supervise well, what do? Do you give the job up? Probably not. Probably what you're going to do is you're going to try and farm out some of the work. You're going to sub the work out to other people. Or maybe you think that that's a good way to scale your business. You're a contractor and you want to, increase your revenue. So, don't give away work. What you'll do instead is you'll try to find other people to do the work for you and then take some profit off of their work. Okay, fine. I understand that, but you can't be outsourcing the work to monkeys who are just going to do a terrible job or maybe not even show up at all. And that's what you do. You go find the dregs of society and you send them to my job site to work on my job because you don't have time and you also don't supervise them. So what result do you expect? Terrible results. So that is probably, reason number one why we see this as a reoccurring theme. Contractors have lots of work. They bid out lots of work. They take on lots of work. They can't do it all. And then they sub it out to inferior, craftsmen, shall we say. And then that's how you end up with these kinds of problems. All right. Another thing, just sort of shady companies. There are contractors and then there are contractors, right? Some of them are large, well-known contractors that have big staffs and nice offices, and and then there's the opposite of that. Well, but let's go back to the big contractors. There are a couple of problems with that. One is big contractors do big jobs. Well, if you're just a single homeowner or you have a small project or something, you may not even be able to get one of these big contractors. And then the more obvious problem is they're very expensive. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, stop hiring shady companies. Stop hiring these small, handyman types that may or may not be licensed, that may or may not be legal in the country. I'm not going to stand here and pontificate to you about that because I understand that every project has its own parameters, and sometimes there just is no margin for these big contractors who, let's face it, and I don't blame you guys. I understand the reasons why you're very expensive. You're doing everything right, so you're paying insurance, you're paying a good wage to all your workers. I mean, I understand the reasons why you're expensive, but I'm not going to stand here and pretend like every job you can afford to bring on that kind of labor. You can't always, and I understand that. But if we're talking about reasons why these things happen, well, that's certainly one of them. Instead of hiring a big reputable company, you got a text with a number of a buddy's buddy, and you heard this person can do some handiwork, and you hired this person, and then you don't have the same recourses. Reason number 3 is, well, there are some bad actors out there. I don't mean to be obnoxious about it, but you can see the potential for abuse when you have a system that calls for an upfront deposit, and you may have some fly-by-night companies, maybe some fly-by-night people. You just collect a few deposits and then skip town or whatever. That certainly happens. And then last but not least, always popular, some of these people just aren't capable. They're not capable of running their own lives. So, they spent your deposit on weed, and now the work's just not going to get done. That, too, is surprisingly common. Part 2. All right, so you have this situation. You're out your deposit money, and now what do you do? What can you do? What are your rights? All right. Unfortunately, there's really only one thing you can do. I mean, short of taking a bat to somebody, you're going to have to sue. That's what you can do. That's your recourse, is to the judicial system. Well, I guess there is one thing short of filing a lawsuit that you can do, and that is to hire me or somebody like me to write a scary letter, send it off to this contractor, and hope you get a response. Now, there is a percentage of these contractors who will take those letters seriously and will try to work it out with you. Maybe they come to you, you guys have a come to Jesus moment, you find out what the story is, and maybe you figure out a way to actually get the work done, and it's not a total loss for everyone. And those demand letters are worth sending out. I mean, it may not be a huge percentage of the workers that come running and make it right, but you got to give it a shot. The letter's not expensive. It goes out on my letterhead, should get some attention, so it's definitely worth a try. And that takes us to part 3. So you send the demand letter out, you don't get a response, or you don't get a satisfactory response. Okay, now what are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to file that lawsuit. But before rushing into that lawsuit, let's ask ourselves, are we throwing good money after bad? Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, Jeff, what are you discouraging me from filing a lawsuit? I mean, isn't that a good thing for your firm? Isn't that what you guys do? And it is a good thing for my firm if you want to be short-sighted about it. But a better thing for my firm is to have happy clients. Clients that return year after year. That's really what we've built our practice on. So I'm going to be very honest with you. Many times, I don't know what the percentage looks like, but many times it may not be worth it to sue. And it's hard. That's a bitter pill to swallow. I totally get it. But let's get into the analysis a little bit, and I think you'll see why I say that. All right, so not all these workers are, somebody's cousin. A lot of them are companies. It might be small companies, but they're busy, and they just didn't get to the work because they're spread too thinly. However, they have an office. They have some trucks. They have equipment. They've been in business for at least a few years, so your small job and your lawsuit are not worth it to them. So if you sue that kind of a company, they don't want to just fold up and disappear. They've taken the time and money and energy to build up some kind of a company. They're not going to just, fly by night. So in that case, sure, file that lawsuit. Go through the process. More than likely, you're going to settle along the way. And you don't have to just be taken advantage of. And I should hasten to add, if you do need to go all the way through trial and get a judgment, they have enough assets that it could make sense, right? You're going to garnish their bank accounts, you're going to lien their vehicles, if they have properties or something, all that stuff that we do to execute on a judgment. So, that story can have a happy ending. But then let's slide back to the other end of the spectrum. Your buddy's cousin's baby brother who still lives with his parents. You're not going to get anything out of that guy. I don't want you to pay me the cost of going through a lawsuit. And don't tell me it's the principal, right? Because it is, but by the time you get into 2 or 3 billing cycles, the principal is going to start fading. You're just going to be unhappy. And I don't want you to be unhappy at me. So let's think this out before you dive into the lawsuit. You're not going to get anything out of that guy. It's hard to face it, but you're going to have to just cut your losses. Probably. Send the demand letter, but don't spend money on a lawsuit. Okay, so that's about the analysis there, guys. I mean, if if the person you hired is at least they have some kind of assets, and they might be worth suing, you can try and make lemonade out of lemons that way. If there's any takeaway, it's probably this. I know different jobs have different parameters, different margins, different requirements, and I don't cast judgment on anybody who hires anybody to do the work. And I understand sometimes that is absolutely necessary. Okay, if you can, however, at least get somebody where the job requires a license, get somebody that has a license of any kind. That will, I think, improve your odds. It's not going to be 100%, but it will definitely improve your odds, because a person who takes the time to go get a license and have that registered with the state, well, they're going to take my demand letter seriously. And also the state regulatory bodies, usually the DBPR, well, they have their own complaint system as well. They have their own administrative disciplinary process, and that doesn't cost anything, right? You can get that going without hiring a lawyer, or with my help, as you choose. So that's, I guess that's the only takeaway I really have for you guys on this topic. I know it happens a lot. In particular, lately it's been happening a lot because I've been getting those calls. And so I wanted to give what guidance I could. And recuerda que hablamos español aquí. And as for the stuff below, please do the honorable thing. And I will talk to you guys very soon.